Hi, Kenny. Will, how are you guys doing?
Hey,
Good. How are you?
I'm okay. I'm hanging in here just like everyone else. How is it on you all's neck of the woods?
good, good.
Same. Hanging
No
in
one,
there.
no
It's
one has
chilly.
COVID?
Same.
No COVID?
No COVID.
Okay.
No COVID.
Fingers crossed. Fingers crossed. Okay. Okay. So no more COVID talk today. That's why I like doing these because I don't have to keep talking about or hearing about COVID. So anyway, so today we're going to talk about how we are trending away from the traditional relationship paradigms. And I'm reading from my notes here. And what that includes is the patriarchal and the heterosexual views on marriage and relationships. There are expectations that some heterosexual men still have under this archaic construct, and that's my wording, calling it an archaic construct. And some of these are the gender roles and the division of labor, the transactional sex, like the tit for tat, the sex as a reward. The woman is there for the man's pleasure and ownership. Men wanting women to change their names. And in the military, the guy's having the expectation that she's going to follow his career over that 20 or 30-year period, that she's not going to pursue any of her dreams or her career or education, and that she's going to just drop whatever she's doing and have children and then follow his career. So yeah, that's what I would like to talk about because it's coming up a lot in sessions that I'm doing with couples. And it's a struggle because we're right now we're at a point where women are, for lack of better phrases, rebelling, and people who are in the LGBTQ community are rebelling against that. Well, I don't even like the word rebelling. But that paradigm, that construct just isn't okay anymore. I mean, we're in 2020. So it's out there on the table. I'm waiting for you all's comments.
So, when I read the proposed topic for today, I got to thinking, who is having this conversation with you? What is the demographic? And when I'm talking about demographic, was the age demographic. Because when I floated the topic out there to my pool of peers, they were like, do you know how hard dating is? It is no longer transactional. It wasn't ever that way while we have been dating in the last 15 years. And I said, well, I think at one point, because we're in our mid 30s, I think at one point we were taught that, well, if he takes you out on a date or if she accepts to go on the date, something's going to happen. Mm-hmm. Whereas now, that's not even close to being true. So my first question before I dive in is, what is the age demographic of the people who are asking this question to you or identifying that they're having to make some changes in their lives?
The age range, I guess, is pretty general, mid 20s all the way into 50s. So I would just say generationally, it's not really making a difference. There are military couples, of course, but I mean, we know that the military population, that culture is very patriarchal anyway. And so that plays a role in it. Just that entire system is patriarchal. And so it may not even be, the male or the husband that being that way. It's just that's how that system is set up. Because I'm hearing that as well, that they have to follow what the core values of the military are, whatever branch they're in. But sometimes there's cognitive dissonance because it doesn't match really who they are, and so they may not agree with having gender roles in a marriage, but then their expectations because of the culture of the military. But I'm trying to think here, like, I know that there are some, they're not usually millennials.
Mm-hmm.
I think the millennials are past that. And the folks that are younger than millennials, they're past that. So it's probably from my generation. And then the baby boomers, of course, they tend to be conservative to the extreme. I don't know. Well, I guess we would use that word. Traditional, conservative.
True. And I think for those baby boomers, they're in like this really unique kind of age range because they're the children of the greatest generation. So there were very specific gender conformity. And then they experienced so many different like civil revolutions, gender revolutions and sexual identity. And so they got to do this free love kind of thing. And then now they live through the technology era. And so for those baby boomers, they're in this really unique category because they then raised Gen Xers. And if they were getting an education, not only did they raise Gen Xers, they also raised millennials, depending on where they had their children. So,
yeah,
I think they probably have, there's a lot of cognitive dissonance with that generation.
Yeah. And then the X-Geners like me, we tend to be the rebellious ones.
Yes.
Yeah, well, we do. Yes. You're not going to tell me. You told me what? I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to do this. You're not going to tell me what to do. So, yeah, that's us. All of the, the tail end, like what you said of the civil rights movement and all of that. Like, yeah, we're the product of that. And so we just took the baton and ran with that.
Mm-hmm.
That's just how we are. We don't like to be told that there are going to be gender roles and transactional sex or anything like that. It's like, are you kidding me? But the people who are the millennials, it's just like it would never occur to them.
Mm-hmm.
Nope. Not even a little bit. So when I read it, I was like, who believes in that? I'm going to have to send this out to people. Do they believe in that? And some of the feedback that I got was, wouldn't it be easier if it were like that on more than one occasion?
Like what?
So they responded that it would be so much easier if things were patriarchal, where there were set roles and there were transactions. It would be easier. And I was like, whoa, because it's not now. So.
Okay, so what does that mean? Would it be easier? What did that mean? What did the person mean by that?
And what was the gender of the person that said it?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so great question. Well, so from one of them, it was a heterosexual male in their 20s, late 20s. I won't give their specific age, late 20s. And his statement was, wouldn't it be easier if it was transactional? Then we would know what we were going into. Like, if it was like a business deal, I took you to dinner, you will now kiss me and or have sex with me or give me a blowjob or whatever we said that we were agreeing to. And then the other person, the first person is a Caucasian. And then the other person who responded, also heterosexual male, Hispanic. And he said, it's already like that. it's already easy within my culture. It is like that, as in that it's transactional. And I was just like, oh,
yeah.
It is a very cultural thing too, even in millennials, because I was thinking when you're talking about that. So most of the people, I mean, I communicate with are my generation, other millennials, and it is different across cultural differences. And I was speaking with someone who had just gotten married, a bisexual woman who's Hispanic who got married. She was talking about the expectations on her that from her parents and her aunts and stuff about how, all right, you're married to him and she should like fix his plate and she should do this, and like by default that she's married to this guy. In their culture they still expect that, and so it was an interesting dynamic because that's not how my culture treated it. And so it is definitely generational and just, you know, cultural as well. And I'm curious also if it's like different parts of the country view it differently. Like I feel like here in the South, it's I feel like people in the South tend to hold to traditions a little bit more than maybe some other areas, or at least where I'm from in Georgia, I know it's very much like that. I don't know here in Texas, but I'm kind of curious, like people in New York, do they view, you know, do millennials there view this differently, or is it more people in the South maybe who are like, well, this is what my parents did, so this is what I do?
Well, I was born in Louisiana, so that's about like Georgia, um, and extremely, you know, traditional. And then there's culture there too, with you know Cajun people and Creole people, but it's still very Southern, and so it's the tradition is there. The patriarchal um, paradigm is there, you know. But in Texas, I would say even though Texas is more conservative, for lack of better phrases, there's so many different parts in Texas. You know, like you have Austin, you know, and Austin is very liberal. You know, that's like the California of Texas. And then you have Dallas, that area up there, that's more New York like. And so that would tend to be a little bit more metropolitan and liberal, and you know, maybe not be so polarized with the gender roles. And then Houston, that would be more like your Atlanta, you know. And so again, that would be a little bit more liberal, I would think. So it's not, Texas is hard to read because quite a bit of it is Southern, but then there are parts of it that seem like, you know, the cities don't even belong in Texas.
That's very true. That's a good point.
That is very true. This morning, I spoke with one of the person who often asks me those questions that I propose to us at the end of a recording, and I'm like, "Can you think about this?" And today he wanted me to call him out, so he wants me to use his name, Mr. Jennings III. He said that for him, and he lives in the northeastern part of the country, and he said it is not transactional, that it's more like in that, you know, services are being tendered. You know, I give you a service, I get a reward. He said it's more like an interview. Whereas nowadays, for him, what his experiences has been is that the woman is the company and the man is applying for employment with the company, whereas it used to be the other way around. And he said, because really we have been taught that even if I take a woman to dinner, even if I buy her a gift, she still has the right to say, that was nice of you, but no thank you. And so through the dating, he broke it down. It was really quite interesting, his perspective. He said on that first date, is that first interview, in that we're trying to provide our references. Like, here's what I bring to the table. Thank you so much for this first interview. I look forward to hearing back from you. Then in that second date is, where's my heart at in this? Where do I see myself with the company in a month, 5 months, a year? Do I want to see the company grow? i.e., do I want to have children? Do I want to branch off in different areas, like get more education? And then in the third date is doing the physical, like, are we compatible? So dancing, rock climbing, like doing a physical activity to see if you're physically compatible. Are there stairs? Is there a wheelchair ramp at the company? You know, like things like that. And then he said, once you get past that interview stage, now we're exclusive, or we're dating. You know, we're in a relationship. And during the relationship, we're still kind of figuring out, do you show up to work on time? Like, are you clean? Do you clean up after yourself at your workstation? And like, women are getting to decide if that is going to work. And then if the woman has made the, you know, like giving you that open door, like, hey, I'm considering taking you to the penthouse. You know, like, I want to see if you can be a vice president in my company. Then the man might consider, like, oh, she's thinking I might propose. Then you do the traditional proposal, the marriage thing, and then we're now looking at stock options, 401ks, investments. And
I love this analogy.
I like it. I like it.
Women are running the company. I'm just like trying to make sure that, you know, I am giving to the company so that I'm a valued part of the company. And that the company wants to see me excel and supports my desires. Like, I want to go abroad and, you know, try something out. And the company's like, hey, I'm invested in you too. And so I thought that was a really unique kind of way of seeing how the patriarchal system is toppling for this person, because
Absolutely.
he's invested with his partner.
I love
Absolutely.
that. I love
it. I love it. And it doesn't matter gender roles, like none of that is there at all. Not at all. So I love it. And whoever that person is, he probably wanted his name so that we couldn't steal it from him. But
credit where credit is due.
Credit.
Cheers to him, and we're stealing this. This is going to be broadcasted. We're stealing this idea because this nails it. Okay, because yeah, when you get into a relationship, you do have to think about what the cost to benefit ratio is, and people don't think about that. You know, until they're ready to leave the relationship, they're like, oh my God, you know, what is the cost to ratio of benefit? So this is awesome.
Okay. The other part of that question that you proposed for us this week, Erin, is the sealing the deal kind of idea. And I thought like that for me, it kind of like really stood out because we've talked so many times about the nature of online dating and the hookup culture and, you know, what are people doing? Like when we're having those conversations, the expectation is this, are we meeting on Tinder or are we paying for a service through, you know, some other type of dating app? So the sealing of the deal.
Okay.
Think, you know, like where are we seeing that still? In media?
Marriages.
Marriages.
Yes. And it's the tit for tat, the transactional sex, and it's because of the gender role expectations in the marriage, and like the female or the vulva owner or whoever the perceived submissive person is there to pleasure the more dominant person or the male or the penis owner. And so then there's the expectation of transactional sex. Well, I've loaded the dishwasher, or I've taken out the trash, I've mowed the lawn. Okay, well now can you come suck my dick? Or we haven't had sex in a while and I've done all these things, and my birthday's coming around, and I want to fuck you in the ass.
Okay. So how do we, with that being said, in marriage, where we're doing these transactional, where we're having these transactional conversations, I can assume that the less dominant person, or the submissive person, or the perceived, that's the right word, perceived person, how do they regain or that power back, or rebel, or what conversations are people having?
I was gonna ask something similar to that, but also a lot of this sounds like, even when talking about the dating as with the whole like tit for tat thing and everything, all of it really seems to come back to communication and how people are communicating, their desires, and kind of this bartering system, almost, type of thing. And I'm noticing a lot, especially the responses you got were mostly from cisgendered guys. A lot of it seems to be very gendered on, and not everyone's like this. It's kind of a stereotype, but typically guys tend to communicate in certain ways, and women tend to communicate in certain ways, especially with the guys liking this establishment, because there's a stereotype of the guys like, well, I not always being the best at communicating, and so for them it's easier if it's just like, well, if I do this, I know I get sex. So it cuts out the communication, and for them it makes it black and white. That's kind of where I get it, and also a lot of the people I've talked to are very much that way, and even and it's just weird. It's just weird, kind of seeing how women and men communicate differently, and how guys. I just think of in my own relationship where I have to be very, very blatant with my husband and tell him directly yes or no, or this or that, or otherwise he won't get it. So,
It makes it sound like they're pets.
Huh?
It makes it sound like they're pets or something, and you have to be very simple. And well, you do this, you get a reward, or don't do that, or no, no, no.
I'm not saying no. So, but it's really true though, and I think that's why guys, and also it comes down to how you're raised. Like, so guys are raised thinking certain ways and getting away with certain behaviors, but a lot of guys really do think that way. They're not always so good at reading between the lines, and so for them, they're just like, if I do this, I get sex, or I just want to establish like I know where this is going. I know it's going to go in this direction. And so I think a lot of it comes down to communication styles and just the way that our brains are wired too.
Mm-hmm.
And along with that point, well, it's not just the men who are trained or taught that this is what it looks like.
Mm-hmm.
Women are trained to believe that, like when we really think about this era of like Disney princesses, and because I think I've said it before, Cinderella like ruined so many young people, both boys and girls. But when it comes down to it, even in cartoons, girls are depicted as subservient and like somebody's gonna come save us. The hell they are. And so women are trained in that way too, that like he's going to come through, he's going to change the light bulb, and now you're supposed to cook for him. So many moons ago, Erin said something so profound in my life that why don't you treat your partner the same way you would treat your dog? Because a lot of times when we have animals, like the dog or the cat meets us at the door and we're like, oh my gosh, we're so happy to see you. And you look up and your partner's looking at you and you're like, hey.
It's so true, though.
Yes.
So the communication's got to be there.
And you want to know the reason why we're so excited to see our pets? Because they don't expect anything from us but love.
Exactly.
They're literally just unconditionally love you, so you're happy to see them.
Yep.
You know?
Yes. And it doesn't matter if, like with our pets, it's, well, they can make messes, they can make mistakes, and we're like, oh, that's okay, let me take care of that.
Mhm.
If it's a partner and they do something wrong, we're like, God damn it, you mother, you know, we do all of that. And it's like, some people are extreme to the point of, I want a divorce. You made a mistake, I want a divorce. But we don't treat our pets like that. We don't say, oh, you pooped on the carpet, it's time for you to get out of my house. Nobody does that to their pets.
Mhm.
You know, when your pet comes to the door, you greet them and roll on the floor with them. Oh, I'm so happy to see you. And then your voice gets all high pitched and you give them treats and snacks and all of that. And you rush into the house to see them. And with our partners, a lot of times we sit in the driveway for like half an hour playing on Facebook or whatever. It's like, oh God, I have to go in the house. Y'all are laughing like,
I'm laughing because it's so true, and honestly, it has helped my relationship so much to actually treat my husband like a pet. Like, I'm not even kidding. Like, it started out as a joke between us, but it became like his key communication style. Like, it started as a joke that we literally heard a comedian say once, where the comedian was talking about how he was with his wife, and it was coming down to like bickering about where they were parking in a parking space. And he learned that if he parked out where he wanted to, because he liked to park further away, she would complain. But whenever he parked like the closest spot, she would just pull an Andes Mint out of her purse and give him one. No, not without communication. And then one day he realized, this is a treat. I'm being trained like a dog. And we thought it was so hilarious that I started doing that with my husband. Like, I literally had bought, he loves like little snack cookies. He's like a toddler. He loves animal crackers. And I had got him those little individual pouches for his lunches, and he did something and I just pulled out one and gave it to him. And he was confused, but he liked it. And then he would start doing things and be like, "Where's my snack?" So, but it has worked so well. Like, now he literally gets so excited to do some things. I've Pavloved him now with snacks, but it has honestly made our relationship communication that much better because the cats get a treat, he gets a treat, he's happy. I mean,
you're happy.
I'm happy, he's behaving better, and he gets cookies. So it's a win-win for everyone.
And there's no gender anything associated.
No, at all.
So yeah, we totally need to move away from this patriarchal, archaic, whatever this paradigm is, because it's making people miserable.
Yes.
Okay, so let's talk more about the changing the names. That has come up in some conversations because people are wanting to get married or thinking about getting married, and this has become a source of contention about name changing. What are you all's thoughts on that? My personal opinion is, well, I mean, the history behind it, it's about ownership of property. Okay, so if people don't want to feel like they're owned or feel like property, then of course you're not going to want to change your name. You want to keep that because that's a part of who you are. But it has become a source of contention for some couples, the name change. So I'd like for you and Will and Kenny to weigh in on that.
You see it a lot in the gay community where they just combine their names.
Yeah.
Like they'll use both names, which I think is really cool. I personally, when I got married, I wanted to change my name because I didn't want to constantly be associated with my family. I was like, so for me, I was like, I just want a different last name, so I'll take yours, thanks. But I know a lot of people who like their own name and they don't want to change it. They don't want to combine it. And I see this a lot. You see it a lot too with people who are like have fame or anything associated with their name. People who publish books and stuff too. They're like, this is my name. I don't need to change it just because I'm married to you. You know, a lot of performers will keep their names too. So,
I took my husband's last name. It was it was, when I say offered, that sounds like so ugh. But my dad was sick, and when we were talking about getting married, he was like, "Oh, if you want to keep your name, you know, because it's your father's name, by all means." And so I thought that was so progressive of him, because none of my girlfriends did that. They all took their partner's last name. And so I really toyed with it up until the point where we went and got our marriage license. And I toyed with hyphenating, but people butchered my maiden name. Like, it's not that hard, but they butchered it all the time. And my married name is just easier. So when we got to do the marriage license, he was like, are you going to keep it? And I was like, maybe if I get rid of my middle name and keep my maiden name as my middle name and then add yours. I called my mom and she was like, don't do that. I love your middle name. Okay. So I took my spouse's, but it was never like a point of contention. My best friend, she's getting married in April, and she's considering keeping her maiden or hyphenating. But then I also have a friend who is getting her doctorates, and she kept her maiden because she's published with her maiden name. And dude wasn't there when she got published. Dude is like, you know, they get to be with one another. They choose each other. She's not his property. And I grew up in a household where my mom is my mom hyphenated. So,
You guys are millennials, so
true.
it's more accepted in your generation. You know, it's not even an argument. You know, it's a brief conversation, and it's usually, well, you can do whatever you want. But then in my generation, even though we're rebellious, maybe that's part of the rebellion. That's one of the things that's rebelled against, the name changing. But I've heard it several times, you know, where a cis male will, and that's usually who it is, will feel offended if she doesn't take his name.
you know, a lot of this comes down to toxic masculinity too.
Yes,
A lot of this is just tied hand in hand with that.
I agree. I didn't change none of the girls in my family changed our last name. You know, we all ended up becoming professionals, and we, have been married before. And one of the first things we said before we got married was, oh, by the way, I'm not changing my last name. It was just said just like that. Oh, yeah, we can get married, but I'm not changing my last name. And so none of us did. So then after we all got divorced, it was easier.
There you go.
Absolutely.
Name changes are an annoying process. I will say that. After doing it twice now, I've considered changing other things, and my husband's considered changing his name because he just doesn't like his name, his middle name anyway. But we're just like, it's so much work.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to go change all your documents, and it gets more difficult as you get older because there's more things tied to your name. It's just a pain. So I never judge anyone. I'm like, if you don't want to change it just for that fact,
Yeah.
I mean, it's work. I feel like for millennials too, a lot of it is based on like emotional attachment to your family or other people's family. Like I know some millennials who will literally change their name just because they don't want to be associated with their family, or they'll keep it just because they love their family that much, you know? So a lot of it is an emotional attachment to the name.
And then
That's
one of you mentioned
unique.
hyphenating. One of you mentioned hyphenating, and I think that's a common way to handle it now, especially when children are going to be involved.
Mhm.
And it's very common in the LGBTQ community to hyphenate the names to represent both sides of the family. So, I mean, I love that.
Friends did. Yeah, my best friends, they just hyphenated it. They picked which one they thought sounded better first, and they just did it that way.
Yeah. Let's see, what's the other one? The gender roles and the division of labor. I guess that would be that, barefoot and pregnant and in the kitchen, or, because you're working, the other person has to clean the house. Well, you all know what I'm talking about. It's archaic. That's one of the archaic views as well. I think everybody should know how to wash dishes and mow the lawn and get up and go get a job and take care of children. I just think it should be equal across the board.
I definitely agree. I've also noticed it's really difficult, and I feel like a lot of adults, especially I refer to millennials because that's what I grew up as. I feel like a lot of us know that, but it's when you're raised. I mean, little boys usually get as toys. There's certain ones, and little girls get like toy vacuum cleaners. They get little kitchen sets and stuff. So they literally start from a small age like teaching you how to do chores, because I've noticed an issue with a lot of millennial guys now that we're 20 something 30 something year old adults. A lot of them want to help, but they didn't have these skills established as a child, so it's like they're playing catch up. Like I've had to teach my husband how to do so many things because growing up, the parents were focusing on teaching the daughter how to do all these things, and the sons were left to their own devices playing video games. There wasn't any parent sitting there telling them, okay, it's like he's like, you need to know how to do this too. They were just assumed your wife will take care of this one day. And so they grow up and now they're trying to manage house for themselves, and they're like, I don't know how to do this. They don't have those skills.
It's true. Gosh, it's so true. Well, I think that the removal of home economics from high schools, where it was both, well, like back in the 50s and 60s, it was only mandatory for women or girls. And then in the 90s and 2000s, I have friends who are like Gen Xers, and the boys also had to have like 1 or 2 credits in home ec. And I thought that those individuals, they had a leg up because they had an idea of, you have to separate your colored clothes from your white clothes. You can't put dish soap in your dishwasher because it will make bubbles. Like those types of things matter. And because now millennials are spending more time at home because student loans are ridiculous and you can't afford to live by yourself, mom and dad are still taking responsibility for running the household. And you may do some things around the house, but you're still not learning how to operate and manage a household on your own. Mm-hmm. So I think that it's not just like male, female. I think that because we don't leave the house until we're older, and when we do leave the house, we're working so hard, the like having equality of like the responsibilities in the house, that has to be a conversation, or somebody's going to get resentful real quick. Because if I'm working 50 hours and you're working 50 hours, you can't ask me to come home and clean house just because I have a vulva. Man, I'm just as tired as you.
Right.
So that's got to be a conversation.
Well, now that people are more able to afford, they have better incomes. And since both parties are usually working, when they argue about gender roles and division of labor and that kind of stuff, I just say, you know what? You all can afford for somebody to come in and clean your house. Then this is a moot point. And then when I say something like that, they just kind of look at me like, first it's like, oh my God, I can't believe she said it. And then it's like, oh, why didn't we think of that?
It would ease so much tension.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It doesn't cost as much as people think it does. You know, if you're both working 50 or 60 hours a week, hire somebody to come in and do the cleaning. You know, you've given somebody else a job.
Again, I think this was a great topic, Erin. Like,
well, I'm glad that you all enjoyed it. Do we have anything else that we want to add to this?
I don't. Will?
No, I was just thinking of like tips for people on like on negotiating, you know, the division of labor and stuff like that. Like one tip that, and I said it to y'all before we started recording, but one thing that we, me and my husband worked out is like, if there's a chore they, you know, enjoy more or something, they do that, and I do something of equal kind of balancing it out. Like he does dishes, I do laundry, that sort of thing. You know, both those get run like 2 or 3 times a week. And because he complains about the way I do dishes. So I figure if he's going to complain about it, he can do it. And he doesn't like folding laundry, and I don't mind it. So I do that chore. So finding a way to balance out, you know, where the chores don't all fall on one person, maybe by one that you're better at doing it than the other person. So you just volunteer, hey, I'm better at doing this. I'll do it for you. So something like that.
That's a great tip.
Yeah.
Because nobody feels resentment or resentful of the other person. Like, oh, it's more like, thank you. I don't have to do that. It's appreciation.
Right.
Yeah, I use the word equitability. That's usually what I say when I'm speaking to a couple when it's about division of labor. It's not about gender roles or anything like that. It's along the same lines of what Will was saying. You know, fix it in such a way that it's equitable and not equal.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I appreciate all of you all's your insights, your opinions, and yeah, we'll have to do this again. I'm sure this isn't going to go away, and so I will need your insights and your opinions in the future.
Absolutely.